Well, we're back. I have cleaned things up. Of course, while I was working on the other stuff, I took a rag and covered up the sump here just to make sure, and just look down in there, and it's hard to not get some little something in there. Just want to make sure everything as clean as you can possibly get it, because any dirt that ends up inside the motor, if it ends up, the oil picks it up and it gets caught in the oil filter, we're usually good. And I don't see anything. Now, one thing I did do, I bought Kohler pan gasket, and my seals are all Kohler. That you can buy aftermarket stuff, and at times I have done that, but I prefer not to. Because see, like this factory gasket, I lay it up there and it's a perfect fit. And this even has a little bead of some kind of rubbery, silicone-y looking stuff. I mean, it looks like that Loctite 518 anaerobic sealer, maybe. Not 100% sure. The other thing I do is, since I'd wipe things down, I take a little bit of engine assembly lube and I'll put on some of this stuff, even though when I put oil in it, the oil should, basically, do what I, get in on all these to begin with. But I still do this. And like right up here, because I already swapped out the crankshaft seal, the new one, I put it in the oil pan before I put the pan on. And then the other thing we do is where the seal is going to contact the crankshaft. Now see, I got a Kohler seal. It's already got grease inside the lip. So, but if I didn't have a Kohler seal and I was putting this together, I would definitely have greased that. And the last thing I do is look and make sure that I don't have any dirt in the pan. And also, I tipped this up. I washed out all the bolt holes. See here, I got a drop oil on it already. Got all the oil out of the bolt holes. Now I'll just set this up here and gently slide it down, and I'll work it back and forth and slide it down. And as it goes down, I'm going to watch that seal and make sure as the pan goes down that it doesn't catch the lip of that seal. That's being a little difficult, so let's reach under here. And I'm going to grab my pulley. And very carefully slide it down on, and should have rotated and lined up the camshaft and the crankshaft timing marks. But luckily I looked and saw where they was at, so I knew which way to turn it. But there's actually a dot on the gear on the crank and a dot on the camshaft that you line up. And if you're not lined up, it's pushing on the lifters, trying to open the valves, and that'll hang you up. And then, of course, we look, make sure it didn't pinch or seal, and then we get that down on there. And then before I even got to this point, I did go get the book out to see what the torque spec was on my sump bolts, which is 216 inch-pounds. Now I cleaned up all the bolts, and right now, even though you can't see it, I'm putting no, you can't. I'm putting blue thread lock on all the threads. You know, because when I pulled this apart, some of these weren't completely tight. Tubes. All right, and then the gray bolts were in all the holes, but this one up here in the front. So I'll go ahead and put the silver one there, then I can put all the rest of them down in the holes. Now, another thing you may notice is that everything is still kind of dirty. Well, I really don't like putting these things in, like this sump, in my parts washer, because you know, my fluid in the parts washer is far from new, and it's far from being even though it takes the grease and grime off, it's far from being as clean as I would like. So I clean out the inside of the pan with some brake clean and a rag, and then I'll put the pan on with my new gasket and my new seal, and get everything down in there. Then I'll put the old oil filter back on. I'll take a piece of 3/8 inch fuel line and jump the ports on the bottom here for the do that back where the oil cooler goes on. I'm going to jump across those so I seal up those openings. We'll have our new gasket in there, and then I'm actually going to take this out to the I'm going to bring my lawn tractor up here, load this in the back of my cart. I'm going to go out by the garden hose. I'm going to hose this down with degreaser and finish cleaning everything up once I got everything sealed. And I'm running this down with my cordless ratchet, but I'm just running it down till I take all the slack out. You run it fast. Yep. See, I'm talking and not paying attention. I went that a little too far. I was going to get it down there close and then stop. Now I've got them all run down close, and I'm just going to take my torque wrench. I'm going to pick a bolt to start with. That I'm sure in the book it gives you a sequence. The big key is don't do one and go in a circle. I'll do this one, and I'll come to the front. I'll skip 1, 2 bolts. Then I'll tighten this one. I'll skip 1, 2. Tighten that one. Go 1, 2. And we're back near where I started. Tighten that one, skip 1, 2, tighten the third one, and 1, 2, tighten the third one, 2, tighten the third one. Then we go 1, 2, and we're back where we started. And I'll go ahead now and I'm going to go in my circle and just make sure that when I click this, and some of them will turn a little bit more. And like that one didn't turn any, that one didn't turn any. That one turned just a little bit. And that's all there is to that. And of course, when I get done torquing them, I'll take my torque wrench and back it all the way off, because it'll stay in calibration longer if you do that. So there we go. We got our sump back on. Next step, I'm gonna gotta go outside and get the oil filter. I'll put the oil filter back on. I can stick that hose back on. It's fitting down there. I'll jumper across these two pipes, and then I'll take my oil cooler and you can see light through part of it, but see, part of it's stopped up. So I'm gonna, I've had a brighter light, you can see better, but you can see it's not, some of it is plugged up, so, and I can see a lot of dirt in there, so I'm gonna do the same thing with this. I'm gonna pull my hoses off, and I'm gonna jumper this with a piece of 3/8" fuel line as well, because I don't want to get any water inside of it. And we also need to look at these hoses real close, because this is a common leaking point here. And of course, I actually think I'm going to get some, and when I'm going to use power steering return line to replace these, because I don't like the way they look inside, and they do feel rather hard, and they're almost 20 years old. So I'm going to replace these because I just don't like the way they look. But power steering return line, then some worm drive clamps, should get that job done. And of course, these use that chintzy spring style clamp, so it's not high pressure, so that power steering return line will handle the pressure of these. Because if you go to Kohler and you try and buy these two hoses, they sell you the two hoses, the oil cooler adapter, the O-ring, and this stud that bolts it all on here. And I think it's around $215 to $225 before any tax. So as long as you don't have a leak in the cooler, and I've never seen one of these leak other than our O-ring that goes in between the cooler adapter and the block. Yeah, the only reason you'd ever have to actually replace this part is if it had a hole in it. And of course mine doesn't, so we're not going to replace it. But yeah, I'm going to it's about quitting time for today, so we'll shut down videotaping today. First thing in the morning, I'll get this all cleaned up, and then after I get her all cleaned up, I'll show you what I got. Alright, back with the Kohler command that I got everything degreased, that got all the oil off the electric clutch, and I even sprayed degreaser and got in here at the friction place, and I'm probably going to hit that with some brake clean because that was loaded with oil. We got our pulley for our transmissions, our spring, our tensioner bolt, and got our oil cooler all cleaned up. But now we got good light through everything, because it was about a third of the way stopped up before. And of course I did the bottom side of the engine. Didn't get everything out from underneath here, but I got the majority of it. It looks good. Now I'm not going to film all this reassembly, because pretty much it's put it back together the same way you took it apart. But got the bottom side of the motor all clean, got the frame clean. I think all I got left to clean up is actually the engine mounting bolts. But I was in the process of doing the oil cooler, putting it back together. I took the original hoses And then, you know, because they're about a 1/4 inch difference in length. And I just measured them and then cut 2 new pieces of hose that was the same length. And I went up to the auto parts store and got the worm drive clamps to put on that. So we'll get the oil cooler back on, get this all put back together, and I still gotta go get a belt. So I'll finish up the video when I get her all done and it's running. Now earlier in the video, when I took this clamp off, I used my little screwdriver and pried it apart. Well, now that we're going back together, I have a pair of these. These are small side cutters that, you know, they're not very sharp. That I kind of dulled them a little with the sanding belt, but I can take these and put on there and crimp that back together and get it back solid. That the only difference between what I got and what they normally use on it is the regular pliers port. When it squeezes, it also pushes that in and flattens it out. But, you know, unless you're dealing with something with pressure, my method works really good, and it saves you putting a worm drive clamp on there, which you can do if you want to, but I just always do that and reuse them. Hey, we got our bad boy mower is all back together. I've got full of oil, everything hooked up. I took it and drove it a little while, did out and mowed some grass. Probably put, I don't know, 20 or 25 minutes of use on it. And so far over here, of course I went with the rear bumper on. Kind of blocks the view, so I'll turn it upside down. But in there where I was leaking oil, we are all nice and dry. Because see, originally we was looking up in here and seeing our oil come down right in this area. Right, well, I don't know if you can see where my finger's at or not, but yeah, they're right underneath the cylinder, and they're near the oil filter. And then of course I got all the new on the bottom. We got our new belt on and everything on and adjusted and cleaned up. All the bolts tight. So got a little bit of splay where I didn't get it clean as I wanted it, but that's okay. It all looks good. Got everything zip tied, because simple things like just like, you know, like the bar off the clutch, zip tying it so that it doesn't touch anything that moves. You know, getting it all hooked up just, you know, like we want it, and things not loose and dangling. I appreciate you watching this video. I hope you found it informative and helpful. That if you did enjoy the video, you can give me a thumbs up for a like. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, because they'll tell them what we're going to see next. And I'll say the comments are welcome, and I'll say I'll see you next time on What's Broke Today.